Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is register. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways we can use this verb. The first way to use the verb register is to mean to enter or record on a list or directory. I think this is probably the most common way you'll hear the verb register used. And it's possible we might hear the phrasal verb register for used in connection with this particular definition. For example, you might register for classes. A second way to use the verb register is to have a list of wedding or baby gifts listed at a particular store. So this might be a little less common or less familiar to you, but it is very much a part of the culture here in the United States that people who are engaged and planning to get married sort of pick out things they might like for their family and friends to give them. And so this action of selecting items is the action of registering. And this might also happen when people are having their first child as well. A third way, to use the verb register is to notice or become aware of something. So if you've been working from home with family around, sometimes you might be working quietly and then become rather surprised that someone standing next to you might not have registered that they were in the room with you. That would be an example of that usage. A fourth way to use the verb register is to express or share an opinion or emotion. So as more candidates are out talking with potential voters, some people would say, I'd like to register my opinion or my thoughts on this subject. Register is a regular verb. To make the progressive tense, all we need to do is add ing to form registering. The past tense and participle forms of this verb are made by adding ed. And since this verb ends in a voiced sound, the ed is going to make a d sound. Registered. Registered. I have not chosen to highlight any phrasal verbs because they all sort of connect back to the meanings we just looked at and just talked about. So we'll move on to looking at how to use register as it relates to permission. And there are three different ways that we can ask for permission, and there's sort of a degree of formality with it. So the less formal way to ask permission is to use the modal can. We can make ourselves just a bit more formal by using the modal could, and we can become very formal if we use the modal may. The nice thing about all three forms here, we're going to look at the exact same structure. So when we ask a yes or no question, and we're asking for permission, so this idea, is it okay for me to do this action, right? We'll start with the modal, then we'll have our subject, and then the base verb. So one of the reasons I chose the verb register is it connects back to this idea of elections that are now just over 5 weeks away here in the United States. So my questions here are all going to connect to voting. Okay? So I have 3 examples of yes or no questions. And I want you to know I could switch the modal I'm using and the meaning is really just about the same, right? So if I want to be less formal, I can say, can I register to vote online? Right? That's a question, right? And someone might answer, yes, you can. Or they could say, sure. A third way you might hear people affirmatively respond is with, of course. course, yes or no questions can also be answered with no. So to this question, can I register to vote online? Someone might say, no, you can't, or sorry, but, and then they provide some sort of explanation. My second example of a question is, could she register to vote today? And again, we might see the answers of yes, she can, sure, of course, go ahead. Those are all fine ways to say yes. But we could also hear an answer of no, she can't, sorry, but, and those are expressing negative. We don't have permission to do the action. And then lastly, our most formal way to ask a question about being granted permission is, may we register to vote on election day? And again, if an affirmative response would be, yes, you may, or sure, of course, go ahead, all are fine. Or a negative response would be, no, you may not, or sorry, but. People will also express permission or the lack of permission in declarative sentences. And when they do that, they will use the modals can or may. So it's okay to use could in a question, but we're not going to do that in just a statement. So to make an affirmative statement telling someone they have permission to do something, we'll start with our subject, then we'll have our modal, and then the base verb. Here are two examples of that. You can register to vote online in Illinois. Or residents of Iowa may register to vote on election day. These are both great affirmative and true statements. Okay. Next, let's take a look at negative statements. So here we're saying no, someone does not have permission to do something. Okay. Here, my example is you cannot register to vote online in South Dakota. You might hear native speakers say the contraction, you can't. Okay. So again, we're just inserting not after our modal can. Okay. The second example of a negative statement is residents of Missouri may not register to vote on election day. Okay. We do not have a contraction with may not, so that should always remain two separate words. And again, both of these negative statements are true statements as well. Let's continue to take a look at some words that are related to our verb register. The first is the noun form of this word. So same spelling, same pronunciation. Just like our verb, this can also have several different meanings. I haven't included them all here just because they're numerous, and many times the other usages I didn't think would be something you hear or read all that often. But I encourage you, go out online, look at the definition of the noun form of this verb. So the first definition I think you will hear is to mean an official list or record. And we have some examples here. So for example, births, marriage, debts, registers of shipping, or registers of historic places. And that actually connects to my example sentence. This building is on the National Register of Historic Places. Okay? That's a noun usage of the word register. A second way you might hear this word register used is as a shortened form of cash register. Okay? Here's an example sentence of that. You should ask the clerk at the register about the discount. Okay? Again, something you probably think about and interact with all the time, but it's connected with this and this idea of recording your purchase. The next noun we're going to look at is registration. It is the action or process of registering or being registered. Okay? So this action happens quite often. Again, we have class registrations, People who want to volunteer for organizations many times might need to fill out a registration form to record that activity. Here's an example sentence of this with this usage. There will be a voter registration event at the library tomorrow. And again, this is another usage I think you're probably going to hear quite a lot over the next 5 weeks. And you may have been listening to this particular usage for the last couple of months. The next noun we're going to look at is registry. Its meaning is a place, an office, or list where someone registers or where records are kept. So you might be thinking, I've never heard or noticed this word. And again, I feel like the most common way I hear it used is connected back to that verb meaning of making a list of gifts one wants for their wedding or for their new baby. And I think actually if you go out on some different websites, if you go to Target, any department store like Macy's, JCPenney, there are many others, you might see a tab at the top of the webpage that says registry. And there you can search for, if you know someone who's getting married, you search based on their name, and you can find the list where they have identified the gifts that they want. So here's an example sentence with this particular meaning. What's on their wedding registry? Okay. The last word we'll look at today is another noun. It's registrant. It's a person who registers something. Here is an example sentence. Race registrants will receive a t-shirt, hat, and coupons for local businesses. So if you've ever participated in a 5K or charity walk or run, this is really common as a way to encourage people to register, to entice them with small gifts. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.